Assalamu alaikum viewers, welcome back to my channel. I'm really glad to have you all here. In our previous video, we discussed different types of essays you have to write in the task 2 of IELTS academic writing exam. And so in this video, we are moving forward with we are moving forward to the IELTS speaking test and what type of questions the interviewer can ask you in the different parts of the IELTS speaking test. Keep in mind that the speaking test for both IELTS academic and IELTS general training tests are the same, so you don't need to also you don't have to prepare for different types of questions. And first of all, I will give you an overview of the IELTS speaking test, what it is all about, and how long it lasts, and what type of questions or what type of parts, or in how many parts it is divided. For first of all, the duration of IELTS speaking test is 11 to 14 minutes. The test lasts for 11 to 14 minutes, and it is further divided into three parts. IELTS speaking test is further divided into three parts. The part one is introduction and questions on familiar topics. Part one lasts for 4 to 5 minutes. In the part one, the interviewer introduces himself or herself and confirms your identity. And after confirming your identity, he or she will ask you 3 to 4 questions about yourself. To keep in mind that the question in part one will always be about yourself, your studies, your work, your home, or your hometown. Okay, these questions will only be about yourself, and so you have to prepare the questions related to your work, your studies, your hometown, and your home. Very rarely the interviewer asks questions related to other topics, and even that topic is not directly related to these four topics, they will be indirectly related to these topics. Also, you can say that these are the four main categories for four parent categories, and all other questions are all other topics are child categories or subcategories. So in part one, the interviewer introduces himself or herself, then she or he confirms your identity, and then he or she asks the question about yourself or your hometown, your work, or your studies. Okay, the part one lasts for 4 to 5 minutes, and moving on to part two. The part two is individual long run. What does it mean? That you will be given a topic. The topic is taken from a social context, just like the essays in the task two of the IELTS writing exam. You will be given a topic, and your task is to speak on that topic for 1 to 2 minutes. Okay, the interviewer gives you a topic taken from a social context, and your task, and you have to speak on topic or give a speech on that topic for 1 to 2 minutes. During your speech or your the interviewer will not interfere you yourself, and she or he will not ask any question during those 1 to 2 minutes. You have to continue speaking for 1 to 2 minutes on that topic without stopping. Okay, and of course it will last for only 1 to 2 minutes because you have to speak for 1 to 2 minutes on that topic. Okay, after your speech is over, the part three will consist of a two-way discussion. Okay, once your speech on that topic is over, the part three will start, and it is a two-way discussion. Question: the interviewer will ask you questions related to the general topic you discussed in the part two. Okay, the subsequent questions, once the part two is finished, once you have stopped talking, the subsequent questions will be related to that topic. Okay, the questions asked in part three of the IELTS speaking exam will be related to the topic you talked about in the part two. Okay, part three lasts for 3 to 4 minutes. The purpose of this question is to check whether or not you have the ability to express and justify your opinion in a complex environment. Okay, the questions are a bit more complex compared to the question in part one. So the examiner wants to check whether or not you have the ability to express and justify your opinion in complex English. Okay, so this is an overview of the IELTS speaking test, and keep in mind that this video is only the introduction to the IELTS speaking test. I'm not going to give you with any strategies or tips or ideas about how to nail the IELTS speaking test. I'm only giving you an introduction or an overview of the types of questions you can expect in the IELTS speaking test. And in this video, we will only discuss the types of questions the interviewer asks you in the part one of IELTS speaking test. That is that lasts for 4 to 5 minutes after the introduction are over. Okay, so the moving on to types of questions. Okay, the composition of part one. Part one of the IELTS speaking test consists of a face-to-face interview with the examiner. Okay, the entire speaking test is actually a face-to-face interview with the examiner. Okay, not in the part one, but the entire speaking test is actually a face-to-face interview with the examiner. Well, but part one of the IELTS speaking test starts with the introduction. As I mentioned previously in the previous slide, that the part one or the speaking test starts with an introduction. The interviewer introduces himself or herself and then confirms your identity. And once your identity is confirmed, she will or he will start asking you questions related to yourself. Okay, you will usually be asked 12 questions based on three topics such as your home, your job, your country, your hobby, your childhood. Okay, as I mentioned, the four main topics are your home, your job, your hometown, and your studies. But there can be the subtopics or subcategories such as your hobbies, your childhood, your friends, your school, your university, things like that, or topics like that. So the main four topics are your studies, your work, your home, and your hometown. And then there are countless subtopics or subcategories from which the examiner can ask you questions about. Okay, so usually in the part one, the examiner only asks 3 to 4 questions, but it can ask up to 10 or 12 questions as well. But on most occasion, on almost 99% of the time, he or she will only ask you about 3 to 4 questions in part one. Okay, the list of topics is endless. As I mentioned earlier, the list of subtopics is endless. They can ask you from anything, but all of those topics are related to those four topics I mentioned before. Okay, you must prepare for different ideas and topics, but do not memorize the answer. This is the one very this is the cardinal mistake most of the students commit, that they memorize the answer before appearing in the IELTS speaking test. You should never do that. You should never memorize the answers or the answer. You should prepare for the answer. You should know what an answer to a question is, but your answers should be spontaneous. You should never memorize them. It does not give a good impression to the examiner, and you can lose your marks. Okay, remember, part one is all about yourself, your home, or your country, or your studies, as I mentioned above many times before. So this is an overview of part one. So these are the four main topics from which the question will be, from which the examiner will ask the question, and I have already discussed them: work, hometown, home, and studies. All the questions will be related to, mostly will be related to these four topics, and these are some of the most common subtopics or child categories related to these four topics. Okay, so work, hometown, home study, these are the four main categories. Birth, childhood, art, bicycle, daily routine, computer class, friends. You have to go through these categories or topics and prepare questions from all of these categories. And as you can see, all these categories or subcategories are related to these four categories or your personal life. Okay, what are your hobbies? What food do you like? What flowers do you like? Do you like going out? What made you happy? What is a leisure time according to you? Do you read newspaper? Do you like music? What about your neighbors? What about your neighborhood? Do you like pets? Do you like readings? Do you like your school? So all these topics are related to yourself. So the part one of the arts speaking exam will always be about yourself. Okay, so you have to prepare for topics about yourself. You have to prepare questions about yourself, and these are some of the most common topics from which the examiners ask the questions. And so you should prepare all these topics. But with this list, I have just scratched the surface. Sorry, this is not an exhaustive list. There are a lot of other topics from which the examiners can ask questions, but these are the most common topics, and uh, most of the time, the part one of the IELTS speaking test, the questions will be from these topics. Okay, so these are the four main topics, and these are the subtopics. So you have a good idea of what are the four main topics and what are the subtopics. Therefore, you can prepare the questions accordingly. So, what type of questions the examiner can ask? So, for example, when we discuss the work is one of the four main categories. So in this category, he or she can ask you the questions like where do you work, what is your job, do you like your job, why did you choose your job, is it a popular job in your country. You can go through the list and check these questions and prepare your answers accordingly. But once again, this is not the exhaustive list of questions. He or she can ask you other questions about your work, and you should be able to answer them. And but these are the yeah. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 12 of the most common questions or most frequent questions the interviewer can ask you in the IELTS speaking test part 1. The questions are about your work. Okay. So the home is the second of the four main categories. Once again, it has a lot of questions such as where do you live, where is your home, do you live in a home or a flat, who do you live with, how are the walls decorated. So these are the different type of questions related to the home category. Once again, go through these questions and prepare your answers. But once again, there is a disclaimer, the disclaimer of sort, so that these questions are just samples. Okay, the interviewer can ask you anything about your home. It can be the exact same question, such as where do you live, or it can be any other question related to your home. But these are the most common questions that mostly interviewer ask in the IELTS speaking test part one if the questions are about your home. Similarly, these are the questions about your hometown. You can pause the video and check these questions, and then these are the questions about your studies. If the examiner asks questions about your study, he or she will most likely ask these questions. Okay, you go through these questions and prepare your answers. But once again, these are questions are just suggestive. These are just samples. You should not stick only to these questions. You should prepare for other questions as well. Go through these questions and think about other questions that the examiner can ask about your studies. Okay, and okay, I have discussed the four main types of topics in this video, but in the future videos, I will discuss each of these topics or categories individually, and then I will discuss the IELTS speaking test part one in more detail. So once again, I am going to assert on the fact that this is just an introductory video or an overview of the IELTS speaking test part one, or what type of questions you can expect in this the part one of the speaking test. I'm not going to provide you with any tips, tricks, techniques, or strategies. There will be a dedicated video for speaking test part one where I will share all of the tips and tricks with you. So this video is just for introductory purposes, or gives you an overview of the speaking test part one, or what it is all about. So once again, summarizing the video, in the part one, all the questions will be about yourself, and the questions most probably will be from four main categories that are your studies, your work, your hometown, and your home. And but there can be a lot of subcategories or child categories from which the examiners can ask questions. And this is a list of those categories. Go through these categories and prepare questions to related to all of them. But you can also think of other categories and do not and prepare as many categories as you can. Prepare for as many questions as you can. But the most important point is that never memorize your questions. Prepare for the side speaking test part one, but never memorize your questions, because memorizing your question means you are not answering your question to examiner. Instead, you are giving him or her a presentation which does not leave a good impression, and you can leave your you can lose your marks. So once again, go through these topics and go through these subtopics and go through the questions. related to four main topics, and then you will have a very good idea of what you can expect to answer in the IELTS speaking test part one, or what the interviewer can ask you about. And in the end, I have these are the I have the sample. I've also added a couple of sample questions from past test. So the part one, look at that. The part one, the examiner asks the candidate about himself, herself, his homework or studies, and other familiar topics. As I mentioned above, the examiner will be asked questions about your home, your work, your studies, or your other familiar topics. I have provided you a list with all the familiar topics, but that is not an exhaustive list. There can be many more topics, so you have to prepare accordingly. Do not confine yourself to those topics, and uh, keep looking for more topics. Keep searching for more topics, and there are other sources on the internet as well. I am sure they will have many more topics to offer you for preparation. But as you can see, this is the sample. These are sample questions from the exact from a real test from the past. So it is mentioned that examiner asks the candidate about himself or herself. He will ask the questions about yourself, your work, your home, your studies, or hometown. So the questions are the examples. Questions are traffic where you live. So traffic is not directly to your now is not directly related to yourself, your home, or your work or studies, but in a broader perspective, it is related to the place where you live. Okay, so so the question will still be related to yourself, such as how do most people travel to work where you live? Okay, you can say that most people travel by bus, or most people use public transport to work or to travel to work where you live or where I live. So still the question is related to yourself. What traffic problems are there in your area? You can say that the roads are very congested. There is not enough public transport for every people, and you can say that the the fares of the public transport are quite high. You can give many more. You can list many more problems as they come in your mind. But once again, the question is indirectly related to yourself. Okay, how do traffic problems affect you? Once again, the question is related to yourself. How would you reduce the traffic problems in your area? So all the questions are related to yourself, what you can do about reducing the traffic problem, how do traffic problems affect you, how do you travel to your work, or what traffic problems are in your area. So it is not directly related to your studies, your home, or your work, but still it is related to you, because our overall traffic problems will have an impact, or will definitely affect your life. So the questions are related to yourself, and you should prepare for them as well. So uh, I'm sorry, this sample is no longer available. I'm sorry for that, but in the coming videos, I will add more sample for you to have a better idea of the questions asked in IELTS speaking test part one. So with this, we wrap up our video. And but before closing the video, please subscribe to my channel and hit the bell icon for me to keep on producing IELTS videos for you. And in the next video, we will discuss about the part two of IELTS speaking test, and what type of questions or topics you have to talk about in part two of that test. So until then, goodbye and thank you.